you show
components in here.
Alright, let me see.
Like, once I get the switch and these components and I still have
Yo,
a
everyone.
Franken system and I've spent the same amount of money as a new control module that has remote and manual
Right.
and accepts.
I think that's everyone.
It's like,
Sure.
right, like, it's cheaper this way, and I can do it all myself. Well, I mean, it's technically cheaper by like $100. By the time I get done doing all the work, the cost of that.
Alright, Jake.
Jake.
Microphones are everywhere. Yeah, what do we got? Alright, so Brian and Seth put together some questions for today. I guess we should just start at the top. What additional technologies or resources should be integrated into the Juneau Icefield Research Program to improve logistics and better facilitate science?
Well, kind of back to what one of the ideas yesterday with like incorporating more engineering into your rather than the science side. You know, if we're bringing in civil engineering people, infrastructure engineering people, construction people, that is an opportunity for them to be in-house labor to build a lot of new facilities and cool stuff there. Right, so they'd get training, we'd be collaborating with other departments, interdisciplinary stuff. Also getting people workforce training for creating infrastructure in the Arctic. So it does go a little bit beyond science, but ultimately it's in the service of science.
I wonder from the JERB side, how much of a headache is the permitting, because it's national forest? Like, what are the limitations for you guys that you've read this in? Yeah, it's a good question. So one thing that's beneficial, when 2018, when I stepped in to the director role, we had, I think, 1 year left of our 5-year special use permit, and we had to piece together a historical record of JERP to actually get approved for the next round. So that was a major headache. Unfortunately, a student at University of Oregon helped us with that process, also with someone from Mark Carey. And so we got that done, and then Tongass ended up giving us a 20-year special use permit, as opposed to 5 years. So that was really exciting. And then what they wrote into the special use permit, this round, one of the challenges we had previously is we had to have approval for every modification or fix that we made to our buildings. And now that's not the case, that we can modify and adjust the buildings as long as they stay the same footprint. If we want to expand footprints, and of course we have to go through permit requests. But what that means is we have the ability to continue to modify and adjust our camps as needed within the same footprint. So that opens a lot of doors for structural renovations, addition of different facilities or equipment on the ice.
You bring in the build up that stories.
It's a good question. I don't think so.
It's not the footprint, right?
So same footprint. Yeah, I mean, we probably can't build like the Yakutami, what was it, the Bruce Willis high rise. The Yakutami town.
Have seen people get around it in other places with strict zoning. I have seen people take a smaller footprint and then use steel beam structure to then build outwards. So you're only, X by X on the ground, but the actual space you have is much larger on the second sort of X number of floors.
I mean, it's worth for everyone's information. I mean, we
for the past 3 years, we have submitted congressional requests to include significant money to Congress to rebuild facilities and also install facilities, like up to $12 million each year. They haven't funded it yet, but the request was submitted with Advanced Structures Composite Center on Newlands campus, and they do a lot of engineering facilities development for hard-tech environments already for the military. So the first year it sounded like there was a little bit of a battle between who might get it, and it just never made it past that battle, because it was like a Army project, an Air Force project, like it was just like a battle in that regard. I think, and the other thing that we have going right now is we do have this capstone program that is now run. Will Minion is the director for the Construction Engineering Technology program at UMaine, where the students in CET have a capstone course where they build some structure as a team. And the first year he brought students up, I think he had 5 students. The next year he had 8 students. This coming year, he already has 16 students that are interested in joining. And they have a huge program that just keeps ramping up. They keep getting more and more interest. So now we're at the point where we aren't sure if we can take all 16 just because of the overall oversight of that many students. But I think there's value in trying to support the best we can, because that's a valuable resource, right? It's been effectively free labor with, professional engineering services to try to help us with the construction of our facilities at the cost of labor and helicopter flights. So that is helpful for us when JERP's buildings are basically been put together by a bunch of scientists that basically know the difference between a triangle and a square, but you wouldn't know if we were buildings. So I think there is motion forward, and we do have opportunity for funding to kind of support these types of things. And how we pitched it is that we could install new facilities, like state-of-the-art facilities, and also use it as a proving testing site for those facilities, as well as allowing us as scientists to use the facilities. So.
Yeah, even as this research grows, like space, it's gonna become an issue for jerk coverage and gets that. Where we park snowmobiles, where we house people, we start expanding programs, like nothing without the undergrads, so. Space will forever be a issue.
I was just gonna say, I love the focus on JERP facilities because I feel like in this moment, it like facilities maybe aren't limiting the science we can do up there, but such a like hard cliff of like they will limit if we don't maintain and upgrade. And so I think it's really smart of this community to like have that be the very first thing that we're like, what additional technologies and resources do we need? Got to maintain the ones that are up there. I was also gonna say, I think that like this style of meeting in terms of like how do we facilitate better science, like having the people who are doing science on JERP or in the JERP ecosystem, getting together every year to talk, like this has been great, and I think we should like this should be the start of an annual tradition, um, in the name of facilitating better science that happens up there.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And also stealing the idea from the first point there, like the cryolist, your list community members, like some way to keep spirit of this meeting ongoing. I know that like your internally has like a Slack channel, but something like that open for all people who aren't even like chirp related, but just Juno science related, where people can like post ideas and just like ask questions. Really cool.
So we do have a JERP listserv, but I wonder if we just make a modification and have a separate serve for those people that are keen on the science side of things too. I don't know, Kaya, is that?
Like an alumni list, right?
Yeah, well, we have the JERP listserv is basically an alumni list. So we could make I mean, that could be the strategy to kind of make a JERP research listserv.
Yeah, that could be nice. I think potentially even more powerful than that though is just like having people talk to each other once a year. And so like um organic conversations can flow from this kind of setting in a way that I think if we just had a listserv, it wouldn't promote collaboration in the same way that if we had like maybe a regular annual event to talk to each other and then maybe a listserv to support continued communication.
Nothing, Kai, maybe you both know better, but what do you feel like the general, do you think people are scared to work on the ice field because of JERP if they're not associated with it? Or does it seem like people have been very open to coming out to you with ideas and seeing how they can integrate? Hard to know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I feel like embedded within that is how much is JERP a click that people can't get into? Um, and like from the inside, that's hard to answer. I almost would like, is Luke still on? I don't think he is. Um, I don't know. I like to think of us as a welcoming, inclusive community that people can come join and be part of.
I think, Kai, you alluded to this yesterday. I think we're a welcoming community, but one of the challenges that I think most people recognize in this room is JERP has never been well funded. So the vast majority of the work that we all do is basically unfunded work. And so it's not that we're not welcoming, it's half the time we have a hard time keeping up with emails if we're trying to actually meet the demands of the science community to make happen what would be really nice to happen, because we don't have a funded ecosystem, so to speak. It's basically a bunch of scientists that get together and are like, hey, this is a good idea, we should actually be collaborating more, and trying to force our funding agencies to say, hey, this is a good idea, we should actually run programs like this where we have a bunch of scientists from dozens of institutions working together to get program for a buck. But, you know, we are now at the generation that we can actually push harder and harder to do that, because now we're the next generation of scientists, right? So I think keeping that in mind is important, and keeping in mind making sure we're actually funding the students to be there, funding the scientists to be there, and making sure we're funding the staff to be there as a more well-oiled machine, I think is a good goal to aim for moving forward. And that, I think, will allow us to actually become even that much more welcoming of the community, to be honest.
Seth, I have a quick comment. That kind of ties into the question you asked as far as like, how to to integrate what we're doing into like the JERP's larger mission, or how to utilize like JERP support. I think for me, like one thing that, as you're, as we're starting to like collect data and, grow these data sets, and you have, these data sets that kind of like fit into the larger, this much larger picture of like all this data that's been collected for decades, or that might be informed by data that's being collected, like maybe weather data or, temper precip or something at like Camp 10. But like finding ways to, kind of take the data that is being collected, maybe at like one location, and inform it with like data that's being collected elsewhere in the ice field, or be able to like share the data that, you've collected or we've collected to like better inform, maybe a project that's like going on upstream.
Dougal, the past 20 talks, I mean, that's kind of what my head was thinking about. Every time someone was speaking, I was just trying to think of, okay, whoever's speaking, how can, the half a dozen talks that happened here, or a dozen talks that happened yesterday or today, be related to that talk? And I mean, I think that honestly is part of our job in this white paper, is to think about all the material that was presented in the past 2 days, with 20 great talks, plus any of the other ideas that we have, and try to synthesize some target grouped projects in a way, or themes that are collaborative in nature, and that can actually help move science forward. In my brain right now, I'm thinking of, you know, a few groupings, like I'm thinking of atmospheric science related targets, drone surveys that are collecting LiDAR observations or meteorological observations, or terrestrial observations being collected for meteorology. Then I'm thinking about the more glacier focused targets like the subglacial. There's tons of possible collaborations from a subglacial hydrology, glacial hydrology perspective, and then of course tons of options for like land stability type studies and tons of snow survey studies. Like that's kind of what we heard across the realm. And then of course planetary sciences is another one. And then it seems like the equipment, like the R&D of the instrumentation equipment, like covers all of them, right? Like across the board, there's value in trying to figure out how you can take any of these tools and use them for the different themes. But I think that's something we should think about is trying to, I just listed off some example themes, but there could be others, or we could narrow them down. But I think that's probably a good strategy for the white paper, is to try to come up with some themes based on everyone's input. So,
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's very, it's just such a cool, I don't know, thing that you've brought together. Where it's been really awesome getting to hear what everybody's working on.
I think one thing we could highlight, Seth, in that vein is the power of JERP to collect complementary data sets. Like we heard a lot of data being collected in similar areas. It's like this instrument complements that instrument, which fills in the gaps of this third instrument, which can't measure. Like there's just a lot of data that can be collected together. There's not too many groups that could say that they have the expertise needed to like do that on such a vast scale. So it's something that Drip can sell that not many can.
What about a public-facing database of kind of scientific data that's collected continuously or yearly on the ice field, like temperature, mass balance? I don't know. It's stuff that is kind of regularly collected at different spots along the ice field. Would it make sense to have it in a kind of accessible public database?
yeah, I think it would. We kind of have it. If you go to JERP's website, there's a data page. I think one challenge is that data page has been wrangled together over the years from, like some of the mass balance observations, some of the meteorological observations. Those have effectively been curated by the USGS with mostly Chris McNeil doing a lot of the brunt of the work for a lot of those data sets, and then Scott McGee for some of the GPS information. I think there's a lot of value in that. One thing that we have come to a conclusion this year is that for those groups that are specifically supported by JERP, we have to make sure we do a good job having written documentation of who is in charge of what data set, like who has publishing rights, first publishing rights. Because one thing that we are trying to do is be very inclusive of and support early career scientists. We also want to make sure we aren't stepping on anyone's toes as we're sharing these data sets out to multiple people and whatnot. So I think that's where the not sticky position gets, but just making sure we're cognizant of that. So it might not be that data becomes immediately available, so to speak, because we also want to make sure we protect the rights of those people collecting it. But like NSF or NASA or others, we want to make sure that data becomes publicly available as soon as possible, too. So I think there's happy medium there.
Yeah, thanks for pointing me to the data page on the JERP website. I actually wasn't aware that was hosted. I'm checking it out right now.
Cool.
There's also, just so everyone knows, there's the archiving effort that's funded by ARET that so we're like scanning all of the documents at all the camps to make them publicly available. And it wouldn't surprise me if we pretty quickly run into oh dear, how are we going to host this, that spins into a larger, how are we going to host all of the JERP data? And also as part of that grant, there's some funding support in particular for early career scientists, if they are like coming up as teaching faculty to um, actually get a little bit of stipend or like their time support for making the data publicly available. So yeah, in coming years, know that that's a resource that will exist. We just yeah, it's still in the really early phases of that grant.
Does something like a KMZ or something exist, not necessarily of the data that's been collected, but just here are points that data has been collected, who did it, when? Does something like that exist? Because that, if that gets around, you don't have to worry about an embargo period on the data or anything, but just here's a map of where things have been done. That'd be a really useful
It's a
resource.
great idea.
Be a great figure.
Because then you don't have to, yeah, be a great figure, and then you don't have to worry about, okay, how am I gonna host, you know, a few point observations that were taken by one group and terabytes of data that were taken by another group in the same ecosystem, just a sort of a card catalog, but
Like you know where to go to
you
look
know where
for
to
it.
go, and you know if you're trying to, you know, I'm interested in collecting this type of data, does that already exist somewhere else, or am I redoing something that was done 10 years ago?
That kind of exists in this moment in a very ad hoc way in the staff run Caltopo archive. So there's like a JERP Caltopo folder, and they have like, yeah, it's like the last like 5 years worth of data collection where those have happened.
As far as like adding technologies or real-time monitoring, one thing that kind of comes to mind, I was wondering if maybe it already exists and I'm just not aware of it. Is there any like, does JERP have any kind of long-term like gauging stations at any proglacial streams for glaciers around the ice field? And if not, would that be something that would be possible to implement?
Good question. We don't currently. The USGS has Lemon Creek stream gauged. They've had that gauged for a while. I think that's the most closely associated one that's gauged. Certainly, it's been a discussion, a point of discussion for a number of years. And I think it probably would just take someone that really wants to chase that as a project to do it. And, you know, it might be a partner with USGS, partner with other agencies to kind of make it happen. You know, you gotta get the money for the instrumentation itself, obviously, but it's definitely would be reasonable. So I'll put it on the list here. Good idea.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, Patrick, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna just waiting for everybody to get to the break. Streamlining logistics is kind of where I'm, you know, that's my bailiwick of things. I think we've pretty well proven that getting things to Juneau is not an easy topic in a lot of cases, especially big, bulky, or hazardous material. That would be something that once we set a process in place for doing that, that JERP could have a coordinator on the outside that interfaces with all the various science teams and arranges either group shipments, common shipments, or shipments to a point and a consolidation that will happen up in Juneau. But by doing that, we could reduce the overall cost for everybody, especially in larger and bulkier items that are being sent up to Juneau, because we can set them up under a like an AML contract and monitor it comes in. But I think that's something that we need to talk about a little more offline as far as the mechanism for doing that. For those on the call that don't know, I'm one of the co-owners of Eagle Raven Global. We're a logistics company in Juneau. And there are two other partners involved in that business, one of which is also quite into science and technology. So we kind of have an affinity for supporting science. So I made an offer to Seth some time back to be able to handle some of your stuff and store it interim temporarily at no charge, and also be able to, you know, get it over to the helicopter. We work with the folks over at Coastal, and North Star and that quite frequently, so we're familiar with those. So, any comments on that? I think I'm not sure exactly where we fit in this or how we could bring that and add that as a service additional to JERP, but I think it's something that could save everybody a lot of money.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, your support there has been very appreciated. So, and I think that's a great topic to add into the mix.
And for reference, we've been struggling to get our big lithium-ion batteries to Juneau from Maine, and Patrick helped us coordinate all that on a barge through Seattle, so. And now we're kind of expanding what we're shipping with this help.
Yeah, I think the one key thing that would be important there is, from our point of view on our end at ERG or Eagle Raven, having a spreadsheet or having a communication, a good solid communication as to what's coming our direction helps us plan for not only square footage for storage, but also the necessary transportation mechanisms if we have to pick it up at AML. If you have AML deliver it, there's additional charges. If you have us pick it up, it isn't going to cost you anything, because we go down there every day to pick up things, so we might as well pick up whatever yours is down there at the same time.
We talked about power systems and things yet? Yeah, how does Dirk feel about the generators? Like, I was just thinking last year, we had to take out the Honda generators to charge batteries, and we were taking up every single outlet in some of the buildings, and I mean, the generator's great for sure, but once we start bringing more systems up that require batteries, does it feel like we have a good system, or that's something that could be improved?
From my point of view on things, and it's kind of a strange area because we do have, not the best weather in the world, but I have played around a little bit with solar technology in the past. And what I find up in Juneau is I get about a 60% on a heavily overcast day off a 100-watt panel. It would be worth maybe setting up a small experiment where we can track and monitor the amount of solar energy during the June, July timeframes. And that way we can put together a power budget or a power plan for either charging batteries or, providing lighting or other things that without the use of a generator. But that's just something, that's another topic we could get into. Wind energy is also another thing, according to Seth, it blows quite a bit up there.
Have you guys talked about like larger battery banks, like ones that could go several days?
Yeah, we've talked about battery banks. I think, there are certainly funding mechanisms to revamp the entire power infrastructure. Sure. And I think that in itself would be a very valuable proposal, honestly. I don't think it's an appropriate proposal probably for NSF, but it might be a great proposal for, not a nonprofit that funds, $150,000 to $200,000, $300,000 projects where we can pull out, some of our old systems and upgrade our facilities to kind of overall reduce our fuel consumption, flying fuel out for generator use, and as Patrick said, rely on, solar power or wind power for our basic needs.
Yeah, we have the storage for it.
Yeah. So I think it's definitely worth considering. But what it would take our JERP logistics folks, facilities and infrastructure folks, Nigel and Greg and Annie, to put their heads together in terms of how we might move forward with something like that. So you'd have to know all the details of what we currently have, and piecing a plan together would take a bunch of forethought. As Patrick said, like actually understanding how much, what we could pull in for power with different solar power banks, at each camp, based on what we might see from an efficiency perspective.
Yeah, even just the low hanging fruit of like having more battery banks around so that the times that we're like turning on the generator just to run the projector and nothing else, that we're like, using the generator to its maximum potential and filling up some battery banks. Like that feels like such an easy thing. It just takes the like, couple $1,000 here and there to like buy the batteries and fly them up to the ice field. It's maybe more than a couple $1,000 since batteries are heavy, but like that would be such an easy change to make that would reduce our power consumption for those moments when we're turning it on just for like, yeah, one thing.
I
But
was
also
thinking-
when you do turn on the generator, you can also set it up in such a way that whatever it's running, it's going to be charging batteries as well. So that would be just